All right, my name is William Fisher, and this is my fermentation video for Microbiology 205. I chose to make sauerkraut. It's very simple to make. I watched a few videos, it was pretty easy. So first, let's start with the ingredients. All you need is cabbage and some salt. First thing you need to do is remove the wilted outer layers of the cabbage, like so. It's no good, just get rid of it, throw it away. Next thing you'll do is cut the cabbage in half, as you see there. And you'll want to remove the core of the cabbage. It's not anything you want to eat, it's inedible. The next step will be easier if you quarter the cabbage like this. So you take the two halves and you half those. The next step will also be easier if you have a mandolin or a vegetable slicer, which I don't have, so I just use a knife. I try to use that grater, but didn't really work out so well, so I didn't really care for it. So I'll use the knife, cut it up pretty in fairly thin slivers. You place the shredded cabbage in a bowl, add some salt. Salt's variable. Some people said like a tablespoon and a half. I'm not really sure how much I used, so I just kind of threw some in. You want to mix it up pretty well. While the cabbage is in the bowl, you also want to kind of squish it, mush it down with your hands so it'll soften it and release some of the water in the cabbage. Place the shredded cabbage in a jar, like you see here. You want to kind of mush it down so there's no excess air bubbles in it, and that'll also kind of ensure that the brine is, or the cabbage is below the brine in the jar. It's also a good idea to place something heavy on top of the cabbage to make sure that it stays below the brine level while it's fermenting. Use a smooth rock. I cleaned it, but probably not a good idea to really use that. There are things you can buy in the store, but I didn't have anything and I didn't want to use it. So I just used what I had, which was a rock. So as you can see, as the fermentation process proceeds, carbon dioxide gas is released. While this is happening, you should either make sure the lid's not on tight so the gas can get out, or you'll have to occasionally kind of go in and unscrew it to release the pressure. Then after a week or two, you have sauerkraut. You'll need to place that in the fridge to stop the fermentation process. And it is ready to open and eat if you are into eating sauerkraut. So the process that turns cabbage into kraut is fermentation. And the main microorganisms involved in sauerkraut fermentation are Leuconostoc mesenteroides and Lactobacillus. Both of these organisms require the use of sodium chloride to restrict the growth of gram-negative bacteria. So what gram-negative bacteria are we talking about? The pathogens such as this. This is E. coli, Salmonella, Staphylococcus, Vibrio, and Clostridium botulinum. Those can all be found on vegetables naturally. The added sodium chloride or salt also aids in the development of the lactic acid bacteria, which is responsible for the fermentation of the cabbage. So these are the good guys. The Lactobacillus and the Leuconostoc bacteria don't actually need to be added to the cabbage to create the sauerkraut. They're actually found naturally on the leaves, along with the other pathogens, or with the pathogens. So the Lactobacillus is the same bacteria found in yogurt and other cultured products. When it is submerged in the brine, the bacteria begin to convert sugars found in the cabbage into lactic acid. And the lactic acid that it creates is a natural preservative that inhibits the growth of the harmful bacteria. In addition to the lactic acid, as we mentioned, there's also producing carbon dioxide. The lactic acid producing bacteria come in a few varieties. Mostly they're anaerobic. Sauerkraut contains both the lactobacilli and the leuconostoc, which are technically microaerophiles, meaning they need very little oxygen, which can be found at the top half of the jar. The first stage of fermentation begins with the Leuconostoc mesenteroides, as it contains the consumes the oxygen and converts it into carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide production is what produced the air bubbles that we saw in the jar. Once the oxygen is depleted, the lactobacillus starts to dominate the process. They thrive in a high salt environment which most bacteria cannot survive in. As the fermentation process continues, the pH lowers and the bacteria live off the added salt and the sugar that's found in the cabbage. The increased acidity further creates an environment hostile to the harmful bacteria. And once again, these are the harmful bacteria. It's E. coli, Salmonella, Staphylococcus, Vibrio, and Clostridium botulinum, which, like I said, they can all be found on the leaves of the cabbage and really on any vegetables. But they cannot survive in high salt environments with high salt concentrations and a low pH, which is exactly the type of environment that the lactobacillus creates. So in the end, lactobacillus has consumed the resources that the pathogens were competing with, but the lactobacillus was able to survive better and consume the resources. And it created a hostile environment for the pathogens, which made them die off, which created a safe cabbage or a safe sauerkraut.